Squiz Kids!
Hello and welcome to this very special Squiz Kids Q&A, the podcast where you, the kids of Australia, get to ask the questions. I'm Bryce Corbett and today we're coming to you from Gadigal land and we pay our respects to elders past and present. I'm excited to say that today we have a very special guest. Joining me in the Q&A hot seat today is none other than the Australian Governor-General, Her Excellency, the Honourable Sam Mostyn. Your Excellency, welcome to Squiz Kids.
It's wonderful to be here, Bryce.
Now, Your Excellency, first things first, that's quite a title that you have there. Her Excellency, the Honourable Sam Mostyn. Two things. One, how do I get a title like that? And two, for the purposes of this podcast, how would you like me to refer to you?
Well, how do you get a title like that? I suspect that you might have to get your skates on and start to think about whether you would like a vice-regal role, like Governor-General, because they're titles that are maintained for people in high public office. And mine, because I have a certain representation role, which we'll talk about, means that those words are part of how I'm described.
Very well.
But today, I'd be much more comfortable if you could just call me GG Sam.
GG Sam.
I learnt that from all the students who come through Government House who found all of that other bit a bit of a mouthful.
Sure.
And I'm Governor-General Sam, GG Sam. I think that works better and I feel more comfortable when I'm talking to young people as GG Sam.
Excellent. Then GG Sam it is. Now, this is a very special week for our special guest. Today marks 1 year to the very day today that the Governor-General has been in her role. So we thought it was an excellent opportunity to plonk her into the Q&A hot seat and subject her to a grilling from the kids of Australia. You reckon you're up for it, Your Excellency?
I'm strapped in and ready.
It's a tough test, let me tell you. Now, as you know, Your Excellency, or rather GG Sam, we asked our listeners to send in any questions that they had for you about your job, about what a Governor-General does, about what it has to do with our system of government, what it has to do with the King, and we were flooded with amazing questions from some very smart children all over Australia. And a huge thanks to all of the kids who sent questions in. But because GG Sam is a very busy woman with all of that governing generally that she has to do, we had to whittle down the questions. Before we dive in, may I say, first of all, a very happy first birthday. How has it been being the Governor-General for a whole year now?
Well, thank you. It's a birthday I didn't ever expect to be having. It has gone so quickly. It feels a lot shorter, but we have packed a lot of things into the job. And I've learnt, just as you do with this show and talking to Australian kids, why it's so important for me to do my role in a very visible, modern and optimistic way. So we've been doing that for the last year and getting really good feedback that to see me out and about, see me visiting parts of Australia, talking to kids, talking to communities, listening to what matters has really hit the spot that I hoped it would. And so this first year has set, I think, the groundwork for how I'll do the rest of my term. I have 5 years in total.
Wow.
And so I'm hoping that this year sets us up to do this job in a way that can add some value to the country, but also brings to life what it is to be a Governor-General and why our democracy matters so much.
Indeed. And on the subject of bringing it to life, you're doing that so expertly, may I say, with your Instagram account. Now, what is the Instagram handle so we can get some people to follow?
I would love everyone to follow this. The more we get, the better, and the more feedback we get. So it's just at GG_Australia.
And for people who haven't yet seen that Instagram account, it is a wonderful example of how you're, I feel, opening up the office of Governor-General. I mean, you welcome us via video into your home at Government House in Canberra or home here in Sydney, Admiralty House. What's the object behind all of the Instagram accessibility, if you like?
Well, when the Prime Minister asked me to serve and then appointed me into the role, he said he wanted a Governor-General that reflected our time and that in particular he wanted a modern, optimistic and visible Governor-General. Now, the Governors-General before me have all been quite visible, but through the lens of, I think, things that a lot of Australians haven't really understood or haven't been curious enough to ask the deeper questions. So it's a lot to ask people in the midst of their normal days to try to work out what the Governor-General does or how our constitution operates and our democracy works. So I was a fairly avid user of Instagram and social media before I took on this role, and I know that it provides a direct connection and visuals matter, storytelling matters.
Absolutely.
So our Instagram and Facebook in particular opens up to the world and to Australians in particular what actually happens once you get behind the gates of Admiralty House and Government House. What are all these things that are words that are thrown around like swearing swearing in or constitutional duties or return of the writs after an election. They're all quite technical words. They're thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
And for many Australians, really no sense of what that really means.
Yes.
So I've with a lot of help from a great team that I have at Government House, and then listening to the students that come through Government House, we decided we would just fling open the doors, and each time I do something that has a constitutional ceremonial component, we film it, we tell the story and show exactly what's happening, and hopefully get people engaged in a way that's not about the old-fashioned view of the job, but the modern Governor-General in a modern Australian democracy that's easy to understand and engage with. And today's part of that, to have this conversation.
Well, look, we're so delighted that you took time to have the conversation with us. Now, are you ready to dive in and take your first question?
I think I'm ready. I know they are very good questions.
They are very good questions. We have a very clever bunch of listeners at Squiz Kids, I must say. And this is a good one to kick off on, because I have a feeling lots of Squiz Kids will be keen to understand exactly what it is that a Governor-General does. Take it away, Avie from Beaconsfield in Western Australia.
Hi, my name is Avie and I am 11 years old. I live in Perth, Western Australia, and my question is, I am new to Australia. What is the Governor-General?
Avie, that is such a great question. And I've travelled quite a bit to West Australia, so it's great to get a question from the West. I tell anyone who wants to listen about my job that it's easy to think about me through 4 Cs. And the 4 Cs are constitutional, ceremonial, community, and Commander-in-Chief of the Australian Defence Force. And within those 4 Cs, I do all of my work. And a good example of constitutional and ceremonial together would be recently I swore in the Prime Minister after we had a federal election.
Yep.
So at Government House, I was able to swear him in and then with him swear in his cabinet. Very ceremonial, but all under the Constitution of who is our government after the Australian people have voted. That's a very strong constitutional manner. Constitutionally too, in my role, because I actually represent the King.
Yeah.
So King Charles III is the King of Australia, and he is the person for whom I take my constitutional responsibilities. So I am chosen by the Australian Prime Minister. This job is always chosen by an Australian Prime Minister, but the confirmation of it is done via the palace and via the King.
Amazing.
So it's an important representational role. I'm as close as you can get to an Australian head of state, but the head of state himself is the King. So I perform all the duties of the head of state in Australia.
On behalf of the King.
On behalf of the King. But there's a very important constitutional matter that everyone should know and be very proud of. I would never ask the King for advice on how I do my job. I would never pose a question about something we're doing in Australia to him for him to give me advice. And he would never contact me or my office to offer me advice or opinions or tell me how to do my job. He does not direct me. He doesn't offer an opinion on how I do my job. I take all of my advice and counsel from the Australian Prime Minister, the government and the Parliament of Australia. And so for all intents and purposes, this is an Australian job with an Australian at the helm in a constitutional arrangement where I represent the Crown. I also I do many ceremonies, beautiful ceremonies for all sorts of organisations of which I'm patron. So I'm patron of over 200 organisations.
Wow.
And their organisations, I think, speak to the character and focus of Australia. And as a patron, we do many ceremonies for them. Then community. It's probably my favourite part of the job.
Tell us about that.
We're kind of doing it now, engaging with the community, engaging with young people. We have 25,000 students that come through Government House every year on the bus tours of civics education in Canberra. Yeah, so 25,000. I don't see them all.
Do you have to cater for them all? That's a lot of cordial.
We do a little bit of catering, but we have a team, household staff and aide-de-camps who work for me who show those young people for a couple of hours around Government House. And then if I'm in the house and in Canberra, I race out and try to spend 10 or 15 minutes with students. We take a selfie, we have a bit of a chat about where they're from, and I ask them the things that I should be focused on, a bit like we're doing today. And that's a form of community. I also travel all over the country.
Lots of travel.
To regional towns, to outer suburban areas, to rural and remote communities, to go where Governors-General go to reflect the light and shade of Australia.
And what do you mean by that?
Australians. So a former Governor-General, Sir Zelman Cowan, once said that the job of the Governor-General is to visit places, see what's good and bad, and reflect that. So that's the light and shade. And then tell those stories, reflect those back to the people who should hear about it or share it generally with the Australian community. So we get a wonderful, diverse, broad picture of how Australia is going. So an example of a tough time, I've been recently in northern New South Wales visiting people who are affected by the floods.
Yeah.
And so I spend that time understanding what they need, the stories they would like told to the national audience of Australians. And we think about that very carefully and tell that story to say, stick with people who are in recovery when really tough things have happened. Some of the kids listening to this podcast might be in places that have had fires,
Absolutely.
cyclones, floods,
Yes.
hail. It's tough. And so we visit. On the other hand, we do visit places that are celebrating the very best of what they do.
Yeah.
And we tell those great stories back to the country where we see the very best of things, innovation, young people doing amazing things, farmers doing amazing things with their soils, food producers, people working in community to help people through tough times with social enterprises, all kinds of stuff. Commander-in-Chief of the Australian
Commander-in-Chief,
Defence
that's
Force.
an important one.
It's an important one. There's a little bit of a misnomer or a sort of
So
funny
you're
thing.
not ordering people to march around squares or...
I do not order, I couldn't command anyone in the Defence Force to go and serve.
Right.
What I do is I'm a ceremonial head of the Defence Force for the purpose of celebrating what our Defence Force personnel do, to pay tribute to what people who've served have always done. So you'll often see me at very, very important ceremonial duties for the Defence Force. I recently gave the Anzac Day Dawn Service address from Gallipoli in Turkey for all Australians, which celebrated 110 years since the first Anzacs landed at Anzac Cove. So I'll do that. Commemoration days like Remembrance Day, the Vietnam War commemoration events. And I grew up in an army family. So my dad was in the army. He served Australia for 40 years. And I grew up, I was then called an army brat. I'm not
The
sure.
official term.
That was the official term growing up. And so army families and Air Force family, Navy families kind of grew up knowing what that work was. That's my Commander-in-Chief role. And I would take all my advice and counsel from the Prime Minister, the Australian Chief of Defence and the Defence Minister. So I could not command anyone to do anything, but I very much enjoy all my interactions with
It must be very
modern
tempting.
Defence
I'd be
Force.
very tempted too. Our next question comes from Patrick in Perth, and he's got a question that lots of children asked. Take it away, Patrick.
Hi, my name is Patrick and I am 10 years old. I live in Perth in WA and my question is, why should children care if they can't vote until they are 18 years old?
Patrick, that is one of the most important questions, so thank you for asking it of me. And whenever I meet young Australians, I go straight to this point about what we celebrate in our democracy. And I know on Squiz Kids you really care about facts and being curious.
We do.
I talk about democracy being one of the great strengths of our mighty country that we must choose to pay attention to and care about a lot more than perhaps we do. I know you do here at Squiz Kids. That's what you're involved in. But
Absolutely.
I think we've got to be really focused on this. So the question is very important. Don't wait until you're 18 to work out why you vote or why you would care about having a vote. Right now, kids all around the country, I think, could be thinking very deeply. Maybe it's through Squiz-E and looking a bit deeper at how elections are held. But think about what makes us unique in the world and why we are such a strong democracy where we have people who feel safe here, who can fulfil their lives however they want, and know that the people they elect are the people that make decisions. And if we don't like what they do, our democracy means that through voting in our elections, we can change governments at all levels. So we are one of the only countries still that has a fundamental belief in it's the people who vote the people who govern us. I met a lady just recently who came to Australia. She was a refugee from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
She came through a refugee camp in Iran. She came into Australia with her daughter. 2 weeks before the last federal election, she became an Australian citizen.
Wow.
Took citizenship, and she told me that the most exciting, important thing she then did was 2 weeks later, after she'd registered as a voter, voted in the federal election.
Amazing.
And when I asked her why, she said, because where I'm from, we don't get to vote. We don't have that. The people do not determine how we are governed. Here, I'm so proud to now be an Australian citizen who can vote. So I think young people are going to be the future of our great democracy, and turning up to vote and knowing why you're voting, the power of the vote, and why being curious and fact-based when voting makes us great.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. Now, let's head to Cape Town in South Africa, where Leah from Melbourne is currently travelling, but she didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to ask you a question. So take it away, Leah.
Hi, my name is Leah. I'm 9 years old and I'm currently living in Cape Town, South Africa. My question for you is, what's your favorite part of being the Governor General?
So, Leah, it's a really, really lovely question. Thank you. It's very hard for me to answer because I have the best job in the country, if not the world.
Sounds
so
pretty good.
There are favourite things every day, and every day I see something about Australia that makes me smile or makes me very proud and engage with who we are as a country. I do think, though, that engaging with students and young people is really the thing that is making me happiest and gives me the greatest sense of where the country is going.
Yeah.
And young people today are very different to the composition of young people when I was growing up.
Absolutely.
So
How would you say that they're different?
So the demographics of our country have changed dramatically, particularly in the last 50 or 60 years. Just last week, I celebrated the 50th anniversary of the first Vietnamese boat people, as they were then called, refugees to Australia.
Amazing.
Now, the Vietnamese community down today is one of our most vibrant, thriving, flourishing, and there's second and third generation now young people who have parents or grandparents who were born in Vietnam.
Amazing.
Now, you can add to that almost every other country in the world where we have people who've come to this country either as migrants who desperately want to be here as part of this great, mighty democracy, or refugees who would have loved to have stayed in their countries, but for reasons of safety and security have had to move and come here. It's almost 9 million Australians today have come from somewhere else to be part of our story, of our democracy. And I now see, when I see particularly primary school students coming through and I visit schools, the diversity and richness of cultures where families have come from, other languages that are spoken as well as English, but an engagement with the Australian story. And as absolutely Australian citizens, bringing this wealth of understanding of how the world works and where we fit in the world.
Yes, absolutely. And I think exactly as you say, the richness, the words you chose, the richness and the wealth these different cultures bring to Australia. We're so very lucky.
Yes.
Now, understanding how Australia's system of government works is, as you said, something that we spend quite a bit of time here at Squiz Kids talking about, because we know it's very important, and that civics education, as it's called, is a very important part of everybody's education. We partnered actually with the Museum of Australian Democracy to create a 4-part podcast series called The Sensational World of Civics, which is available on the Squiz Kids website for any parents or teachers who are listening. And it's why these two next questions from Charles in Ipswich and from 8-year-old AArav in Plumpton, New South Wales, are both such good ones.
Hi, my name's Charles. I'm 9 years old and I live in Ipswich in Queensland. My question is, do you have to make a lot of decisions for the Australian government?
Hi, my name's Olive. I am 8 years old and I live in Plumpton in New South Wales. My question is, are you able to change the laws?
Well, Charles and Ara, thank you. They're really great questions and they go to the heart of what I do. I don't make decisions on behalf of the Australian government, and the civics program, I'm sure, explores all of this, and I can't wait to see that series because I think that civics is pretty sensational too.
It is pretty sensational.
Yeah,
I know.
It gets
and
me excited.
we're gonna make all Australian kids think the same thing. Don't you worry, Gigi.
I think the coolest kids will be those.
The coolest kids will be the civics kids.
That's it.
I
love it. A new strapline. So in my role, I take all my guidance from the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. When matters come up to me, though, from the Parliament. So regularly I have bills that come up to me after they've been through the House of Representatives and the Senate. These are...
And we should point out, Bill is not a person.
Bill is not a person. It's a document.
A document, yes.
It's the beginnings of the law. And so the law, we are generally prescribed by legislation and laws that tell us and prescribe how we do things,
how the country works.
Where the money comes from.
Where the money comes from.
That's right. What are the rules that tell us about how we live in this country and the relationship with our governments? And this is the Commonwealth's legislation that comes. And so they are called bills as they are making their way through the House of Representatives and the Review House, the Senate. And so that process...
That's the green one.
The green one.
And then the red one. Goes to the greenhouse first and then to the red one.
The red one. And sometimes in between those or from those houses... the bills can go off for debate.
Right.
And so once that process is complete and the matters have all been dealt with and there is a bill, a document ready to get what is called the Crown's assent.
And this is where you come in.
That's right.
As the King's representative here in Australia, you have to give each bill or each law the royal assent.
That's correct. And so up will come very beautiful looking documents. They've already been signed by those who represent the Parliament, and then there's a space for me to sign and to give the Crown's approval to the legislation.
That's a massive responsibility.
It's a big responsibility. And every time I have a bill before me, I have to sign 2 copies for the record. I look at the space where I'll sign my name. And I think in doing this, the moment I've finished signing my name, this becomes the law of the country.
Wow.
So it is a very important moment, and this is why our system of government is so stable and so reliable.
Let's head back down to Victoria now, to the eastern outskirts of Melbourne, where Oliver from Murrelbach has a question that actually I have to say I'm interested to know the answer to.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Oliver. I am 8 years old and I live in Murrelbach, Victoria. My question is, as Governor-General of Australia, are you allowed to vote in elections? And if not, why not?
Oliver, this is such a great question because I asked this question myself when I first started a year ago. And I am allowed to vote, but we are asked the question about whether we think it's appropriate to vote.
Okay.
And so I was asked by my official secretary, do you think it's appropriate in your role for the next 5 years to be going to an election and voting, given the role you play? And quite often after an election, if it is not clear who the winner is, there is a role for the Governor-General to play in making sure that the right Prime Minister is then sworn in if there is any doubt about that. So there's a lot of process there.
Yes.
We didn't have to do that in the most recent election because the Prime Minister and his party won a majority.
Yeah.
So it was a very simple process to swear in.
Yeah.
But that may not always be the case.
Yeah.
So I thought about this and took some advice from the Australian Electoral Commissioner as to could I choose not to vote? And he pointed out that voting is compulsory in Australia. So if I was going to break that rule of turning up and compulsory turning up on the day, I would need to write to him to say that I intend not to vote for the next 5 years, and please don't fine me or think I'm a bad person who hasn't turned up.
So it's like getting a note to the principal.
It's exactly what it was. And I had to write a note to the principal to say, to the lovely commissioner to say, the reason I will not be voting is that in my job, I can have no politics, no policy. I don't dispense anything outside what the government of the day asks me to do and what I respect in the community. So I would rather not even ever have to think about in my term who I would ever vote for. It removes every bit of any thought about politics, and I can be quite clear about the fact that I don't go along and get a democracy sausage as much as I miss that moment.
What a shame.
No, and so some Governors-General have chosen to do that, some have not.
Sure.
And it's also available to the partner, the husband or wife of the Governor-General. So I asked my husband, Simeon, he's a barrister, and I said, would you also like to be part of the letter to say we won't vote? And he said, absolutely not.
Good for him.
I am not the Governor-General.
Because he likes sausages.
He loves sausages, loves the democracy sausage. He loves going up to the school to vote.
Yeah.
But he said, I don't think it's appropriate. I give up the absolute democratic right I have as a citizen to vote because I believe in the power of the compulsory vote system and the independence of our electoral commission. So I will not do that. So we don't talk about who he voted for. I haven't got a clue who he voted for. We don't talk about those things in this role. But I certainly did not have to think about it. I didn't vote for anybody. And I'm hoping that the Electoral Commissioner will not be charging me or fining me and saying, I didn't turn up, but maybe I'll get that at the end of the term. But it's a great question from Oliver because it's really important in my role, and everyone who has sat in this role knows we can have absolutely no politics. I'm not close to any particular political party. I've never been a member of a political party. I have been a policy advisor in my past, but never on the political side. And I think for confidence that young people and all Australians have in their Governor-General to know that there's never any interference, there's never any partisan politics. We are the one place that is above that and I think provides constancy, certainty, continuity when everything else can get political.
Now, Gigi, Sam, here's a question that, if answered correctly, and I want you to think long and hard about your answer to this one, this could make you not just the King's representative here in Australia, but it could in fact make you the actual Queen of Kids here in Australia. Connor from Coorparoo, take it away.
Hi, my name is Connor. I am 10 years old. I live in Coorparoo, Queensland. My question for the Governor-General is, can the Governor-General please ban homework, as kids do way too much in school?
That is a fantastic question, Connor. Goodness me, I wish I could have asked someone to ban homework when I was your age. I'm going to really disappoint Connor.
No.
I
With
do.
all of that power, you're the commander-in-chief. You
I know.
can't tell teachers or principals.
No, I can't. I can't tell them to ban
Connor.
homework. No, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, kids of Australia.
I do say to every group that comes through the school, though, that I do love teachers.
Okay.
I think teachers are doing
Teachers are the best.
They're the best. Teachers are very cool. And I think if you're getting homework, it's because your teachers want you to be your best self.
There you are.
I do know I get lots of homework too.
I'll bet you do.
So I do a lot of homework most nights.
So
I do
that's
lots of
exciting to
research.
hear. Homework doesn't finish when you finish school. Then.
It doesn't, and it gets more, maybe it gets a bit more interesting because you get to choose the things that are
Indeed.
interesting, but it teaches you, homework teaches you how to be curious
Yes.
and go deeper into things and in your own private time work out how you want to engage with a subject. And so Connor, maybe think of homework as a chance to think about your future and know that the Governor-General is also doing homework most nights.
There you go. You're not alone, Connor. Let's head back down to the south now and hop across the Bass Strait to take a question from our youngest inquisitor today, 5-year-old Luke from Kingston Beach in Tasmania.
Hi, my name is Luke. I am 5 years old. I live in Tasmania, Kingston Beach. And my question is, have you met the king and what's he like?
Oh, Luke, thank you so much for that lovely question. It's a very special question. And I have been to Tasmania a few times lately. Lately it's been up in the northwest, but I have been to Hobart, I think, where
beautiful part of
Kingston
the
Beach
world.
is. Yeah, so thank you for that question, Luke. I have the great privilege of saying yes. I have met the king
Wow.
on a couple of occasions.
Amazing.
Yeah, I first met him when he was Prince Charles. He came to Australia and did a tour and he looked at the Great Barrier Reef and he had a meeting with some people who were interested in the reef on an island called Lady Elliot Island in the middle of the
Beautiful
Great Barrier
part
Reef.
of the world, yes.
Yes, and I was part of a group there that welcomed him to that island and we went out on a glass-bottomed boat to look at the state of the coral. So I met him as a prince, very interested in Australia. He did some of his growing up in Australia.
Indeed.
In Geelong.
He went to school for a very brief period
He
in
did.
Geelong.
And he has a very strong and very affectionate view of Australia and his time here. And his mother, the Queen, when she was the Queen of Australia, she came many, many times. So there's a strong relationship between the King and this country. As King, he is a very modern king. He's interested in things that I think most of the kids on this podcast are interested in. He's interested in how young people are going.
Yes.
He's interested in what's happening with the environment and nature. He's interested in First Peoples and how that across the Commonwealth matters to him. He's interested in what it means to be a modern king. And so when I first met him, again, I've got to show my privilege. I went to London. I went to Buckingham Palace.
You did not.
I did.
You've been to the palace.
To meet the king.
Wow.
I
Did you
know.
walk in those gates at the front with the guards standing to
Yeah,
attention?
so we drove in a beautiful car with the
Yes.
Australian flag flying. There were lots of people outside the gates who thought I was very important and must have thought I was maybe...
You are.
Well, no, I think they thought I was a major part of the royal household before taking photos. And I felt like saying, no, I'm
just me.
I'm from Australia.
Just Gigi Sam.
But you pull up and you're welcomed by the wonderfully robed guards and that
Amazing.
escorted me up through to the King's private quarters. And we had about an hour together, a wonderful
Was
conversation.
he wearing his crown?
No, he was not. No,
Was he on the throne?
No, he was not. No. So that's the thing about being modern. He's in a very beautiful place. I mean, Buckingham Palace, after the meeting, his team took me through all of the art collections and the ballrooms and the beautiful things that are
What's
housed.
it like inside Buckingham Palace?
It's just as you'd imagine. It's a palace. It is extraordinary. It's the most beautiful art, history everywhere, exceptional things that you can't believe you're close to
Wow.
and seeing history in real time.
Yes.
And it's all on display. And there are public tours of Buckingham Palace, so Australians visiting can book a tour and see what I saw. But what a lovely, lovely man, a lovely couple. As I said, deeply committed to Australia, and they had worked with our team to build a program to meet a modern, diverse and successful Australia. He met people who really matter to the future of the country, and he met a lot of young people and reflected on the fact that Australia is a mighty country and one that he's very proud to have his association with, but he's also very clear about us determining our future as well. And that question always of not telling us what to do, but deeply invested and interested about our success and proud of everything that we do.
We're very lucky in that respect. We had a lot of questions, as it turns out, about the King and your role with respect to him, which is why this question from Rachel in beautiful Lakes Entrance in Victoria is such a great question. Take it away, Rachel.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I am 10 years old and I live in Lakes Entrance in Victoria. My question is, does the King have anything to do with making laws in Australia? Thanks, bye. I love Squiz Kids.
So, Rachel, that's a really important constitutional question, and one that goes to the unique nature of our constitutional monarchy, which is our system of governance and government. The King does not have a role in the making of laws in Australia, other than that final piece, which is the royal assent, where the Crown gives effect to the law, which I administer as the Governor-General. And I would never ring him or contact him through the palace to say, what do you think I should do with this part of the lawmaking part of the country?
Sure.
So all those things are within our Westminster system of government, our parliamentary system, our very solid constitutional democracy, which works so well for us and allows us over time to develop and mature as a modern Australia, but keep things very, very continuous and solid. That allows us the freedom to do the things we do with the people we elect into our parliaments.
And I love that you say that you could ring him. So you have his mobile, or
actually,
you slide into his DMs, or how does that work?
That was probably a little bit cheeky of me. I would contact him via his official secretary,
well.
and so no, I couldn't ring him, but I do write occasionally with just updates on how we're going. And we've just celebrated the King's birthday long weekend, where we had the King's birthday honours announced, and I'm in the process of writing him a long letter which just says, how is Australia? More out of respect for his interest in how we're going, and to tell him a few stories about what does success look like. I've been travelling the country meeting all of the Australians of the Year and the finalists, the young Australians of the Year, the local heroes. And they're the kind of stories that the King would like to hear. Is what does it tell us about who are the very best of Australians? And I think I might write to him about Squiz Kids, because if civics are exciting and sensational, that's something I think a modern king wants to know. I could share with him that I participated in this and that there were questions about the King and his relationship to Australia. And I think that gives him a sense that people are still interested and know that affection we have for the royal family and for those many visits they have made end up in really interesting, curious questions for me.
Bit of a change of pace now, Gigi Sam, as we head to Jerilderie, beautiful place in New South Wales, where Wilbur has a very important question.
Hi, my name is Wilbur and I'm 11 years old. I live in Jerilderie in New South Wales, and my question is, what team do you go for in the AFLW and AFL? Go Tigers!
Oh my goodness. Wilbur, go the Tigers. I can't believe I said that, actually.
You said go the Tigers?
I just said go the Tigers.
All right, on the record.
They are, the Tigers are an incredible team and an incredible club. So I am a long-time supporter of the Sydney Swans.
Okay.
Yes.
Go the Swannies.
Go the Swannies.
Yeah.
But I am one of those people in footy that can get pretty excited about other teams if they're not playing my team.
Okay.
So if the Tigers and the Swannies were playing, of course I'd be all Swans. But sometimes I'll see the Tigers playing another team and I'll be all in for the Tigers, and because they are such a mighty club, and that those 3 premierships back to back in recent time,
amazing,
incredible. And Tigers fans should take that. Well, because I wish I was with a team that had 3 back-to-back premierships.
Oh, there's always hope.
There's always hope.
When there's time, there's hope.
That's the great thing about footy. But in AFLW,
yes,
I find it harder to have a team. Of course, the Swannies women's team matters to me because I'm a Swannie.
Yes.
But I also find that in the women's, because it's so new, because we're just starting out on the journey of women's professional football, that I just love every one of the teams, all the women that play, the people who support women's footy in the AFLW, because there was a time when women did not have their own competition.
Indeed.
And I was working in the AFL at that time on the board, and I was approached by women all over the country who said, why don't we have a competition for women? And why, when we're about 12 or 13, do we have to stop playing? But our brothers, our cousins, our dads did it, our uncles played. Why don't we get to play in a competition? And a lot of women brought that to me. A lot of men thought about that too and said, why can't my daughter or my granddaughter, why can't she go off and play her favourite game?
So, and to that point, if I may just interrupt, we do have a question from Bronte on the Gold Coast, who is actually asking very much around this very specific question, and I'll throw it to Bronte now.
Hi, my name is Bronte and I'm 12 years old. I live on the Gold Coast. My question is, I hear you helped create the AFLW. I was wondering, why is it important for girls to play sport, and what's your favourite footy team?
Thank you, Bronte, and I reckon Bronte's probably got a lot of sporting stories to tell us about.
I think Bronte's probably quite an accomplished sports person,
I think so too. So go Bronte and go girls in sport. So I think it is really important that we've come a long way of thinking equally about boys and girls and the sports we can play. if I flip it, at the moment, one of the fastest growing sports for men and boys is netball.
Indeed.
And so getting over this idea of that some sport belongs to men or boys or women and girls is something we just got to throw that out and
Absolutely.
say all sports, all people, all abilities. And so I was really proud to be involved in developing AFLW because there wasn't a pathway. But if we think about what the Matildas have been doing, our Australian women's cricket team, the
world beaters,
and the strength of just women's sports competitions across the country, and the support that men and boys have, and see it as just part of the most incredible thing.
It's a sport.
And we're a sporting nation.
Indeed
Sport matters to us. And so you ask about why is it important that girls play sport? It's because everything we do to make sure that girls are equal makes us a better country because everyone's better. It's not just about the girls and women. It's about being an equal country where everyone gets to do the things they want to do. We don't put barriers on because you're a girl or you're a boy or you come from another place or you look different or you have a different level of ability. Everything should be open in sport. And we know that when sport's at its best, it binds us together. Just as, with sporting fans, we get very excited. It makes us feel good. We go on the highs and lows of our team. Really importantly for young people in sport, I think in team sport, we learn how to win well and we learn how to lose well. And I grew up playing lots and lots of sport. I think it's one of the reasons I'm actually in this job is that team sport taught me why team matters, what leadership looks like in a team, but how you can win well by not just ignoring the fact that there's another team or how did you get to win, who supported you broader than the players, and how do you lose well when you feel pretty miserable and take the good things out of it about your team. And they're pretty good life lessons.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I love it. I see a lot of sport around the country and I get to as much local sport as I can all the way through to some of our international representatives. So
Wonderful.
It really matters. And the girls' sports movement just tells us that we're getting more equal and that we've got a lot of talent. And I also say my daughter was a good example of this. Sport wasn't the greatest thing for her, but she enjoyed participating at school because it was team and it was a chance to get to know other students. But she's involved in the arts. Today she's an actor and a writer. And I think it's important we don't think of these things as competing against one another.
No, indeed.
You can be in the school play or the school choir and still be in the sporting teams and vice versa. And it doesn't mean that you've got to be tough to be in sport and soft to be in the arts.
And one is not more worthy than the other.
They all matter.
So many of our Squiz Kids, boys and girls, they love dance classes, just enormous out there in the
dance, gym,
so important.
Sport, getting up and doing public speaking, asking Squiz questions, being
playing
interested,
chess.
playing chess,
playing
doing crosswords,
absolutely,
all those things, and having an interest in the arts, going and visiting galleries, listening to music, making music,
absolutely,
engaging with things that I think make us whole creatively, and I think kids particularly, and I'm sure it's the same with Squiz Kids. You make beautiful things, you write beautiful poetry, you write beautiful stories. Your questions today are beautiful in that they go to something about who we are today. So, so sport's great, but so are the arts and culture, and doing it all is actually sort of what I generally recommend.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, Gigi, I'm trying to get in as many kids' questions here as possible. Let's now go to Colin from Carwoola in country New South Wales, which is not far from Canberra, and 9-year-old Amelia, who lives in the ACT itself.
Hi, my name is Colin. I am 9 years old and I live in Carwoola in New South Wales. My question is, why did you want to become Governor General?
Hi, my name is Amelia and I'm 9 years old. I live in Canberra in the ACT. And my question is, what is the most interesting thing you've learnt while being the Governor General?
Well, thank you for those two questions. They work quite well together. What am I learning in this job? I'm learning a lot about what it really means to be Australia in a modern context. I'm seeing things from a perspective I didn't ever have because I see things every day that tell me where we're going and how our country works. And I see that as part of the privilege of Governor General. And did I want to be Governor General? No. And it had never occurred to me. I mean, I was a pretty serious student. I was school captain at primary school.
Congratulations.
To all the school captains out there, maybe it can take you to the office of Governor General.
There you
I
go,
don't
school
know.
captains. Take note.
Yes. So I've always been that kind of studious person, but I would never have thought that I would be in this office today. I still pinch myself, and you never know what's possible. And I think part of what I always did growing up, and it started when I was quite young, was saying yes to all possibilities and being quite preposterous. When someone said,
really important
could you
lesson.
do this? Instead of saying, I'm not ready for it.
Or I don't know how to.
Or I need to be better at this before I do it, which often we do when we're young. I just said yes.
Good for you.
And the worst thing that can happen is you make a few mistakes, but generally you get into something new, you do something, you represent, you show up, you get on that stage, give that speech, whatever it is, and suddenly you discover things in yourself that someone else saw.
Yes.
Because that's why they asked you to do something. And I found in my career I did that a lot. And it ends up with the Prime Minister asking me to do something which is completely preposterous. I didn't ever think I'd be the Governor-General. But now that I am, I'm paying attention to why the job matters and why the civics matters, because I've realised that I hadn't been paying attention enough to our civics, either growing up or as an adult.
Yes.
I thought we were okay. And when I saw the research,
yes,
so few people, not just young people, but so few adults know about our civics and care about it. And that's why misinformation, disinformation, all those things suddenly makes decisions for us rather than us being curious and interested and full of power to determine our futures.
Well, that is a wonderful segue to our next question, and it's a question that's quite close to my heart. Now, as you know, we're all about media literacy here at Squiz Kids, teaching Aussie kids how to think critically about the flood of information that they're exposed to online on a daily basis, and especially to make sure that they don't fall for what you've just spoken about, mis and disinformation. We've created a free media literacy resource called Newshounds, and Oscar from Sydney has a question on that topic that he'd like to ask you.
Hi, I'm Oscar. I'm 12 years old. I live in Sydney, New South Wales. My question is, Squiz-E tells us to stop, think and check when we're online. Why is media literacy so important for kids?
Thanks, Oscar. And you're in Sydney, where I'm spending a bit of time at the moment, and we're here recording in Sydney, so it's wonderful to get your question. This is a really, really important question, and I'm so glad that you care about information and learning. I've become a bit of a fan of Squiz-E. I like the idea of the newshound that's out there searching for truth and fact and remains curious. So I think, and the evidence tells us that we now are surrounded by so much information coming at us from so many different sources. It's getting very hard to work out what is fact and what is someone else's opinion, or it's just wrong. It's factually wrong, but allows you to think certain things and make bad decisions. So I think the fact that Squiz-E is out there doing that job, it really matters. I wish there was a Squiz-E for adults, actually.
Oh, well, we're working on that.
We'll do that because I meet adults who believe everything they're hearing as well. And that misinformation or the deliberate disinformation where you're taking someone else's view on something rather than getting facts. So the fact that Squiz-E asks us all to stop, to think and to check, that's a very good set of rules for all of us, for everything we do. I also say that in this country we need to care about the way we debate things. So I say we've got to show respect for someone we don't agree with. If you want to hold your line about what you believe in, how we debate should never be about violence or anger or discounting that person entirely and being rude. It should be about saying, well, I know you think that, I think this. If we can't agree, let's just leave it there, but let's not have a big fight about it. And we learn about that in sport.
Yes.
Back to the Tigers and the Swannies.
Yes.
I can go to a game and think the Tigers fans are my enemies during that game, but we do it well because we respect each other's love of the game, but we have a different perspective. And at the end of the game, we're friends again. And I think that's something I think for young people to learn how to disagree or argue well and with respect, so we don't end up with fights and hating people when we don't need to.
Yes.
Just respectful conversations, always based on stopping, thinking, checking.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better ourselves. Back to Victoria now, where 8-year-old Josh has an excellent question. Take it away, Josh.
Hi, my name is Josh. I am 8 years old and I live in Lakes Entrance, Victoria. And my question is, if you could make any rule, what do you think would be the most important for Australia?
Josh, thank you. That is such a great question. And I wish I could make rules. I think, as your civics education will tell you, I don't actually get to make the laws. I give effect to the laws that come through the Parliament at the will of the people. But what I am really passionate about is putting something at the centre of the culture of Australia for everyone to think about. And I said this when I was first sworn in the Senate in my speech a year ago today. I said, if we could put care, kindness and respect at the centre of everything we do, then that would make us an even better country and it would make us better people. And I think about this through care for each other. How do we show that care for one another? How do we have care for those that do the caring of others, like teachers or nurses or doctors or aged care workers, disability support workers? They're doing lots and lots of care all the time. Your parents, actually, doing that great caring work, or your siblings. whoever you're caring for, and then care for our continent, the environment, the beautiful things that have always made us feel good about nature and Australia's natural environment, and then care for, as I just said in one of the other questions, care for the way we have conversations and deal with very tough issues, and finally care for civics and institutions. So we should care about the civics as you do here at Squiz Kids. Not just think about civics as some kind of topic. It's the fundamentals of how we operate as a nation. And there's a gift there, if we care to think about it, about certainty and security and continuity.
Absolutely.
I think, so if I had a superpower that was to do something, Josh, it's not so much that I could make a law, but my rule for the day might be show care and kindness and respect in everything you do. And I think the country would lift. Because wherever I see that already, communities that put that at the centre of what they do are magical. They care for each other. They think about care. And care isn't soft.
Yes.
It's actually quite hard to do regularly.
Indeed, yeah.
We've got to show up.
Yeah.
Volunteers.
Yes.
If you be a volunteer young,
Yes.
show up and help your community. That's hard to do, but by doing it, you're showing that you care and you're being kind to others who might need your help.
Yeah.
And underpin it all with respect. And I think they're actually characteristics of Australians that we should care very deeply about. And so that would be my rule.
I think that's a great
care,
rule.
kindness,
We
and
might need to
respect.
get some Squiz Kids badges made up with
Oh, I'd love
kindness,
that.
care and respect.
I'd love that.
Yeah. Almost at the end now, Gigi Sam. How are you bearing up in the hot
I'm
seat?
loving this. These
Oh,
are
good.
some of the best questions I get.
They're good questions,
They're wonderful.
aren't they?
They're wonderful.
Clever kids. All right, we're going to go 2 questions to go. And on the subject of inspiring, here's a question from 8-year-old Amelia in Sydney. And it's worth noting before we take this question, as you've already mentioned, Australia has had 28 Governors-General in its history, and you are only the second woman to hold this important position. Amelia, what is your question?
Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm 9 years old from Beaumont Hills, New South Wales. My question is, will you keep inspiring young women of Australia in your role?
Amelia, thank you. That's such a kind question because I hope I can in this role. You'd hope that anyone in these high public offices does think about how we lead and inspire others. It's not something I think you set out to do, but I think it's all about how we conduct ourselves that others find appealing and find courage to then be their full self. So thank you for that lovely question, Amelia. I hope I do inspire women and girls, but that's not the only thing I hope to do. And it was important as only the second woman in this job to show up and do it and show that women can do anything that men can do and that we don't need to separate ourselves based on our gender or how we show up.
Yeah.
It's about who we are as in our character and our personality and what we care about. So I hope that I can also, maybe it's not inspire, I hope I can show people, everyone, what it means to be a visible, modern and optimistic Governor-General. I hope I can, by doing this, open the veil through that visibility on why these roles matter, why we should care about who sits in them and care about these institutions that tells us so much about how the country does work. And I feel very, very fortunate. I'm the mother of a daughter. My daughter's now in her 20s, but I've also got 2 beautiful nephews. And they're about that same age too. And I hope that it doesn't just come down to girls and women, that it's everyone. And that boys see that girls doing well is perfectly normal and that when boys are in charge and do things that they do that respectfully of everyone, including women and girls. So it's about showing up for everybody and doing the job well and always showing that care and kindness and respect for the entire Australian population. And that's part of what I think we do in these jobs is ensure that we can represent well.
Final question now from Felicity in Windsor, which is a lovely suburb in my hometown of Brisbane.
Hi, my name is Felicity. I am age 10 and I live in Brisbane, Queensland. My question is, when you were 11 years old, what did you think you would do when you grew up? And did you ever imagine that you would become the Governor-General of Australia?
Well, thank you, Felicity. Queenslander, I've been saying a lot of Go Blues lately with State of Origin, but it's it's tense. It's very tense. It's a very tense series with State of Origin. So we'll put that to one side.
Put that to one side.
May the best state win at the end of it all.
It's the safest thing to say.
It is the safest thing to say. Felicity, when I was 11 years old, I'd just been my school captain at my primary school. So I sort of always showed up for things, school councils, and I was that kid that would take things very seriously. I had no idea what I wanted to be, though. I'd grown up in an army family.
Yeah.
I knew that being part of a community was important. We grew up with some disability in our family. We'd done a lot of volunteering in disability communities. We'd done a lot in going and being volunteers. I door knocked for the Salvos.
Wonderful.
I door knocked for the Heart Foundation because as a family we were always about the neighbourhood and about showing up and being part of a community. So I don't think I was consciously thinking about what I wanted to do. I didn't have a burning ambition to be a scientist or a doctor. There wasn't that kind of path. I think if I look back, I just wanted to be part of things that make the world better. And that being involved in things where you do show up and being part of a community can make things good. So I had never imagined this. It is still the biggest shock to me that I'm here. It is also the biggest opportunity, and I was never. I'd never think about that lightly. That once you say yes to high public office and to be your Governor General, it means something that requires an absolute commitment to the best values, to representing Australia well, to reflecting Australia back, and to listening. And so that's why being here at Squiz Kids, listening to these great questions and thinking about the fact that people in my role have got to give you confidence that one day any one of you could be in this role,
Indeed.
if it's something you wanted, or anything else you want to do.
Yeah.
And when you find the thing that does matter to you, and I've got friends for whom it was really important, the thing they knew early was the thing, to stick with it and give it a go and know that following passions does make you happy. And sometimes having a backup plan is good so that you can survive well. But sometimes it's about following the things that really matter and always showing up with good values. And I think I get back to being kind to people, caring about others, showing respect and backing yourself without limits. And I think that I was doing a lot of that without being conscious of where it might take me. But it ended up being one of the luckiest lives. And I feel the immense privilege. And I would never have imagined I'd be here talking to so many wonderful young kids all around the country and encouraging you to care as well.
What a wonderful note to end on. And that, Your Excellency, the Honourable Sam Mostyn, is what we call in the industry a wrap.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been so great.
Oh, it's been such a wonderful honour to have you on Squiz Kids. It really has.
Yeah, no, I'd love to have you back maybe at Government House or Admiralty House.
Well,
do some walkthroughs.
We've been watching the amazing work you've been doing on Instagram, and we'd love maybe to come down and visit, do a Squiz Kids visit of Government House and Admiralty House to maybe, if you would be open to that.
Consider that invitation given.
Oh, wonderful.
You just need to choose the date and time and we'll do that.
Oh, that is fantastic. There you go. We've all been invited to Government House. How lucky are we? Listeners, if this is the first time that you've stumbled across us during the school term, Squiz Kids is a daily news podcast made just for kids. A kid-friendly take on the big news headlines. Fun, free, fresh. And teachers, don't forget about Newshounds, our free media literacy resource, teaching primary school kids how to spot misinformation when they come across it online. A 9-part podcast series with accompanying classroom workbook and a teacher manual currently being used by more than 4,500 classrooms around the country. Check it all out at squizkids.com.au or simply subscribe to Squiz Kids in your favourite podcasting app. For now, though, this is Bryce Corbett signing off, and as is customary with our Q&As, we're going to ask our special guest to do the traditional Squiz Kids sign-off.
Thank you, Bryce. Now get out there and have a most excellent day.
Over and out.